This is a picture of a motor starter, and I'm going to describe a schematic that shows how this motor starter works with a open and close push button switch along with some other components. But before we get into the wiring diagram and the schematic, I just wanted to go over a picture of the starter itself. So this is an Allen Bradley starter, and what we have here is the terminals where the three-phase power would come in. Typically we would use 208 volts three-phase going into the motor starter. What we have here is the coil. This starter acts like a relay, so when this coil is energized, three contacts close inside, one contact for each phase, which would then bring the power to the overload relay. Overload relay is adjustable, and it has a reset just in case the phases overheat. The relay will trip and will open up a set of contacts. So we have contacts down here for the overload relay, and at the bottom of the overload relay, we can't see it from this angle, but the three phases would then go out to the motor. And on the side here we have an auxiliary contact, and we'll go over that when we talk about the circuit next. This is the wiring diagram, motor starter circuit, and we were just looking at this starter right here in this area, and what we have here is the power coming in on these three terminals, L1, L2, and L3. Then we have the coil here, and this coil will close these three contacts for the A, B, and C phases. It will also close this contact here, which is an auxiliary contact. After the voltage goes through the contacts, it comes down to the overload relay. Any of these phases, or all three of them, gets too hot, this contact here will open up. Then after the voltage goes past the overload relay, it then goes out to the motor. And over here we have the transformer, which receives 208 volts, two phases, and steps it down to 120 volts. Then we have a fuse, a normally closed stop push button, a normally open start push button. And this is the wiring diagram, and this is a good physical representation of what would be in the field. And this is very helpful for wiring up the circuit. To make it easier to understand the circuit, and for the purpose of troubleshooting, we'll look at the schematic next. So this is the schematic diagram of the same circuit, and what we have here is the transformer again, and from the transformer the fuse is next, and voltage will go through the fuse as long as the fuse is not blown, to the normally closed stop button if it's not pressed, and then to the start button, which is normally open, and voltage will also go to the up to the auxiliary contact. On the other side of the transformer, which would be the neutral side of the transformer, we'll have neutral going to the overload contact, which is normally closed. As long as the overload relay does not trip that contact will be closed, and neutral will go to the coil, the M1 coil. And this is the coil that controls these three contacts here, as well as this contact. Once we close the start button, voltage would then go all the way to the coil. And once this coil is energized, then that will close these contacts, allowing current to go to the motor through all three phases. It also closes this auxiliary contact. And the reason for this auxiliary contact is so that when we let go of the start push button, then the current will still have a path to go to the coil, and these contacts still stay closed, and the motor still runs. And the motor will run until either the stop button is pressed, or the fuse blows, or if there's loss of power, or if these heaters get too hot and this overload contacts opens up, but then the motor will stop running. So an example would be if the stop button is pressed, we open the circuit here, this is no longer going to be energized. This contact will open, and these contacts will open as well, and there'll be no power going to the motor. Another possible scenario would be the overload relay here. If one or two or three phases got too hot, then this here contact would open up, and then there would be no power to the coil, and that's also going to open up this contact, and it's going to open up these three contacts, and then the motor would stop as well.